Oh, hello. Today's video is going to be my tournament report from the Element Games Return of the Jedi Trials Shatterpoint Grand Tournament that was last weekend. Yeah, just a couple of days ago. So, what was it? It was a 2-day Shatterpoint event. There were 44 players, which is absurd. I think that makes it far. Bear in mind that the GriffCon GT was, I think, 14, 16. I don't think the LGT is going to get 44. Like, whatever whatever Jed does, he does it well, right? 44 players is certainly the biggest Shatterpoint event I've ever been to. 6 rounds, standard 2-hour round time, mission critical lasts 30 minutes, which is really good. That's just how you play Shatterpoint. That's just the standard. That's great. And it was a premier event, so you take your 4 squads, you can mix and match and make your lists, and you have to play each squad once. Good. So venue and stuff. Listen, I've talked about Element Games before. Element Games, obviously, big web store. Everyone in the UK has heard of Element Games, but at their sort of first original store in Stockport in Greater Manchester, they have the Northwest Gaming Centre. It's massive. To put into sort of like, there were 44 of us playing Shatterpoint. There was also like a Yorkshire versus Lancashire Middle Earth tournament, right? And I saw a Siege Studios airbrushing workshop. Like, it was busy, but it didn't feel overly full even then, right? So great. They've got a fully licensed bar with a great range of drinks. They've got some draft Pepsi, on the gun there. They had cans of Coke, Diet Coke, Monster. They've got all kinds of beers. Ora was telling me they got loads of like low alcohol beers, if that's your vibe, right? So loads of stuff there. You can order food to your table as well. They don't really sell food at Element. They've got like crisps and chocolate bars and stuff like that, but you can order food from one of a couple of different independent fast food places. I personally didn't eat any lunch because I'm dieting, right? And I knew I was going out for a barbecue place to have a massive dinner on the Saturday night, and I knew I was going to be eating at McDonald's on the way home on Sunday. So I didn't sample the lunch stuff, but Oro had something on Saturday and it looked pretty good. Hipster burger, chips, you like that kind of thing. I can't praise Jed enough, right? He is the Element Games, the Manchester area sort of tournament organizer. He's an absolute legend, because he's the exact right mix of like laid back and confidence for TO. So he doesn't like try and micromanage everything and make everyone like feel like they're back at school or in the army or anything like that. But at the same time, he has the confidence and assuredness that when you call him over to ask a rule, he's just like, yeah, no, it's this. And if the other person tries to argue that it's not that, he's like, no, it's this, right? So that's good. There's free parking at Element Games, which is nice, but the car park is a right state. Basically, what you've got there is you've got a car park, and it's in between about 4 businesses and shared by them, and it's full of gravel, and the gravel has massive dips in it, and when it rains, it forms a massive lake. I habitually wear Doc Martens boots everywhere, so I was basically okay. But if you'd come in like canvas shoes or something, you probably would have really had a bad time and had soggy feet all day if you tried to park in the car park. So there's that. And then the one thing that I will like, it's probably going to be the only negative thing in the whole video, and I've mentioned it before, and I don't want to go on and be tedious about it, but like, Element Games is just another in a long list of like gaming, like tabletop gaming venues in the UK that are not accessible. I don't even really truly understand that it's legal to do a thing where it's like, yeah, this thing's just up 2 flights of stairs, so if you're in a wheelchair, you just can't. You just can't come to the Shatterpoint GT. Like, and I know that, like, I'm not in. I do have mobility issues. I'm not in a wheelchair, but I'm in that situation where like I will have premature aging, and one day I may end up in a wheelchair, and I can manage 2 flights of stairs at the moment, and God willing, next 10, 20 years, hopefully, right? But like, it just constantly, And I know the economic reasons for it. They are where they are, and moving their venue would be hugely expensive, and getting a lift is hugely expensive, and doing anything about it is hugely expensive and not economically viable, and this, that, and the other. But like, always just one of those things that I feel like I have to mention because it sucks. Right? Moving on. The rest of the video is going to be happy smiley time. Okay. Um. So what was I playing at the GT? I've made a couple of different videos where I talk about the list that I arrived on and why I arrived there. It's Cassian Anchor, because I believe that Cassian with Baze and Turret is probably the best. Those two cards together are probably the best thing in Shatterpoint. I think you're in this. I know people are going to disagree with me, because a lot of people think like the nerf that one or both of them needs is really straightforward. I genuinely think you're in this interesting situation where I don't think Cassian needs a nerf. I think Cassian was fine before Jin's box came out. I don't even really think Baze and Turret needs a nerf by itself, right? Because they're not that killy unless they're being powered up by Cassian. But it's just the way that they complement each other to be insane, right? Because Cassian's downside is he brings 2 force. Well, Baze and Turret generate their own force, so they're totally force neutral. Slash, after the first turn, when they're in the middle of the board, they might not even need to spend force to move, so they're generating force for your team. Baze and Turret, if they have a problem, it's that they're not actually that killy. They're less killy than, say, Han and Chewie, they would normally like compete with for a slot. But with Cassian, because they can get a focus for like off an action, and then Cassian on the Shatterpoint turn gives them +2 dice. If they focus, they become ridiculously killy. So there needs to be a nerf, I think, to the Cassian Baze and Turret pair. Which character card that nerf ends up on, or how you do that, I don't think. They are taken together. They are S tier. They are individually S tier because the other one exists. It's really difficult, but I'm convinced that together they're one of the best things in Shatterpoint. So I was like, well, let's just take that in every game. Surely that's the best thing to do. And then the rest of the list, I've spoken about it at length. Was just an attempt to make things fit with what I believe are probably the 4 best primaries in Rebellion. And then got to get the Rebel Commandos in there somewhere. Makes sense to run Chopper with Kanan because of running out of supports, and he likes having an extra Spectre that can get killed. Lando and R2 make so you can fit K2SO under Jin. Could you have put Chewie and Rebel Commandos under Jin and K2 and Lando and R2 under Leia? Yeah, you could. Why did I put them the way around I did? I just thought that if you're ever going to spend momentum on Jin for anything, K2's like revenge trigger is probably where you're going to spend it. And then I decided to go with Sabotage because I'm not planning on necessarily using Leia's squad in most games, and therefore not having the commandos most games. I don't want to risk taking Never Tell and then my opponent's got Never Tell or First Contact, and it's like, I have to take Rebel Commandos now again. Sometimes I want to run other things. So yeah, I think that's where I ended up. Let's get into the games. So my first game was on the you played on the Ewok board before. It's quite interesting. My first game was against a guy called James Coleman. So James had Kanan Mando Boss Hunter. I think he was probably trying to get rid of his least confident list in round 1, like many people do. I kind of was getting rid of my least confident list in round 1 because I'm not. I'll talk about K2SO at the end. I think I'm not. I'm not as up on K2SO as I think I should be, having talked to my wife who really dislikes having to play into K2SO. And I think I should probably use him more. Yeah. This was my closest thing to a kind of because Mando Kanan is a revenge list, and even though I was also playing basically all revenge lists, Jin doesn't need revenge triggers to do well. This is kind of a closest thing to anti-revenge list. Jin has good movement. K2SO has lockdown. Bartu has good movement by themselves. Ezra has his tiebreaker. So there wasn't a huge amount of killing that went on in this game. I got 3 wounds on him. He got 4 wounds on me. So I got 4 moves with Cassian. It was pretty. Like, I did win in 2 struggles, but both those struggles felt relatively close. And it was largely just neither of us wounded each other very much, and I won the sort of placing models in places and scoring the points game. You know, I was just able to shuffle my things onto the points and keep them and hold them better than he was. Yeah. So I won round 1 in 2 struggles and headed into round 2. Round 2, I was into James Beck. Now, I saw they had Never Tell, so straight away I was thinking PLC because I want more of my commandos when I have found Never Tell because they infiltrate. His other list was Jin Andor. So I guess he didn't fancy it very much and he decided to go for his Boss Obi list. Now, my wife plays Boss Obi all the time. So I was very familiar with it. She usually beats me, it has to be said. James running Delta with Boss, so the full Delta box, and then it was Obi, Rex, and the Republic Commandos. I'm not sure. He won the roll off. If I were in his position with that list, I would have chosen my Sabotage Showdown. I'm not sure why he went for Never Tell, but he did. I think that was largely advantage me, although we ended up playing on the X in Struggle 1. I just did a phenomenal amount. I did a surprisingly crazy amount of wounds in this game. And it's like, sometimes when you have Base Insurer and Rebel Commandos, and if you get your second Shatterpoint card relatively early in the game, so you get to go for 2 big Cassian Shatterpoint turns. And I also think Cassian rolled really well on his This Town's Ready to Blow ability and did a lot of passive damage that way. So I just managed to kill a lot of stuff. James also, I think, probably made the tactical error of killing a lot of my stuff. Leia was able to do her thing, a fair bit of kind of shooting someone and then pushing them off points. I don't know if he was forgetting to discard hunkers to like heal and dash back onto points and things, or like my memory's not perfect. I certainly wasn't going to remind him of how to kind of win. Or like why don't for all I've talked about, like to what extent should you hurt your opponent? I think telling your opponent, by the way, you have this ability that does this thing is probably beyond the pale, right? For most people. And I had fun with Chewie. I've kind of not. I've been a bit down on Chewie. He's kind of a secondary of last resort in this list in some ways, but he did surprisingly well getting into the middle and keeping Ezra alive. In the sort of scrum around that garage in the middle of the board there was really useful. So yeah, high scoring wound game, which is what I like to see. And yeah, this felt like a really good game for me. I mean, he did take a struggle off me, so it wasn't like I stomped him or anything, but I have always struggled into Boss Obi traditionally. So yeah, that was good. I was feeling really, really happy. I'd won my first 2 games, and I was starting to dare to dream. And then Connor came to crush my dreams. So playing on this relatively sparse-looking table, I think it's fine. So Connor had the list he played, which was Obi, Rex, Commandos, Cam, Shack, and Arfs. And his other primaries were Mace and Hunter. I largely played Kanan because I'd played the other 2 lists and wanted to have played all 3 lists by the first 3 rounds, I think. I think I would have done better with PLC. I think PLC was probably the pick into this kind of, you see Obi-Wan and you see, you know, Mundi, and to an extent Mace. I know he is a killer, but he's kind of a very technical piece. And you see these pieces, like, there's not a list that's going to try necessarily to go full aggro on me. So Um, and as you can see, he only did 2 wounds, right? Um, he played a very deliberate game of moving, being on points, scoring the points, right? And even though I managed to do 6 wounds to him over the course of the game, he just managed to eke out the win. Now, maybe it was close. Maybe I would have been able to take it if literally there was a point at the end of the game where if Kanan had just managed to get like an extra push on his attack tree, like one more success through, and pushed forwards. I held on to a point. I could have held it on, and it was doing that thing where enough of his stuff was wounded that like the fight back was happening. But he just managed to sort of keep his head above water and get the things and do the things and get the things and do the things. I did take a struggle off him, but yeah, yeah, it was a close game, and ultimately, like Connor came third overall, and I had a close game against him and took a struggle off him, so I can't feel bad about that, right? But yeah, he was the one to end my path of uninterrupted victories. And so then I was into Fraser. That's how it goes. I played Connor, and then I played Fraser. That's how it ends at GriffCon as well. Except the Griff Connor beat Connor, but then I had to play Fraser. Fraser is, as I've previously described, the world #1 Hondo player. Um, so Fraser was running Hondo Ezra with Lando, with Kanan, Callus, and Commandos. Now, I knew that Fraser loves to do wounds. He's an aggro player. So maybe I should have gone with my Kanan and we should have played Kanan Mirror. But PLC is my comfort pick. And I think I felt really good in the PLC game I played. Whereas Kanan just lost me a match. But like this was probably my second worst loss of the whole game. Fraser, wow. Thanks, Printer. I no, oh, thank you, Printer. Yeah, amazing. I barely understand almost what Fraser does things with Hondo that I didn't think were like possible. I mean, I didn't remember that Hondo had a mobility, a revenge trigger. You spend a force and he just gets to move. I think it caught me out with that at least one time. But like when it comes down to it, Fraser's just really good at Shatterpoint, and he's really good just at the fundamentals of moving, blocking you off ladders, being in the way, understanding like where everything is, how far everything is from everything else. And it was a very quick game, and it was a very kind of severe drubbing. And I don't want to take away from Fraser's skill because he is a very good player. But I genuinely felt reflecting on this game because I was like, why did I lose that one so badly? And I put up such a good defense of myself in the game against Connor. And I genuinely feel like it was the end of the day. It was the last round of day one. I'd feel salty because I didn't expect to win and like win the tournament and come first and or second or third or fourth or any of these things. But like having won the first 2 rounds, I got in my half headspace of being like, actually, I was like, I'm doing it, I'm doing it, I'm doing the thing, and then you got lost, and then like that one loss cascades into another loss somehow, and so I don't want to take away from Fraser because he is a very good player. And I think he could be a really like top table player if he maybe Hondo's his good luck charm, but like I feel like if he'd used some meta stuff with the skills that he has with Shatterpoint, if he used the actual like the things that everybody acknowledges them as powerful things, he could like win tournaments or top four anyway, right? Um, I think I need to do something to reduce my cognitive load a little bit somehow. And part of that is what I'm thinking, and we'll talk about this at the end. I'm thinking of dropping to instead of doing an anchor list and having this rotating cast of things, of just having the one list that I really want to play, and then another list that I play once, and then you're just hammering one list for 5 rounds, and that's gonna mean you have less to think about and less to hold in your head, and you're more practiced with the one thing that you're doing. I don't know if that's gonna help. I just genuinely feel this was. I genuinely feel like I'm not saying I would have won if it was my first round, but I think I would have done better. I would have taken a struggle. I would have, because ultimately, like Fraser didn't finish nearly as high as Connor did, and yeah, I felt my game against Connor was far, far closer. So I do just think there was an element of I lost the game, but I don't want to take it away from Fraser in that sense because, like I say, I've said it 3 times, and I'll say it again. He's a really good player. He deserves the win. Played really well, and he outplayed me. He certainly did. But yeah, it was a confusingly fast 2-0 drubbing. Not the worst drubbing I would receive in the tournament. That would be my round 6. But it was a drubbing. I even forgot to take a photograph. Right, and then we came in for day 2. Round 5, I was paired into Sam Page. I was a little bit apprehensive because I know Sam is a big wheel in the sort of like he runs the like Jed runs Shatterpoint, but like he's also like an organizer element. I think he plays a lot of Legion, so I thought he might be really, really good at the game. So I was a little bit apprehensive in that sense. But he made what I considered to be a tactical error in that he basically just said, "Yeah, I'm going to play boss hunter." Before I'd committed to a particular team, he had his other team in his box, and he just said, "Yeah, I'm playing these, whatever." So because I knew, like, I know that boss hunter just is a one-trick pony. It's I'm going to murder all your guys, and that's my thing. So I'm like, cool. So if I play Cassian Kanan, that's my like revengiest revenge list. And I should win that matchup. Now, it's fair to say as well, Sam had really bad dice. We ended up in a farcical situation where it took him 3 activations to kill Sabine. Like, he got Sabine down to 2 wounds, and then he shot her with someone else and took a wound off her, and then he shot her with somebody else and finally did like the last wound, I think. And it got to the point where it may even have been another activation of him trying to kill Sabine. And it got to the point where I was like sitting there going like, right, cool, he's going to kill Sabine, and that's actually really good for me because then I'm going to move Ezra on to the point over here, and then Kanan's going to kill Fixer over there, or whatever it was. And then Sabine was like, "No, I'm alive on 1." It's like, oh. So he did have really bad dice, but I also think it was a really bad matchup, which he didn't help by saying what he was doing, right? But I think it was a really bad matchup. He was playing a list that really only had, as far as I knew at the time anyway, and as far as he seemed to know, 1 win condition into a really strong revenge list. He did take a struggle off me. Like, I'm not saying it was a trivial game for me to win. It wasn't like I utterly stomped him, but last few activations of the 3rd struggle and the writing did start to seem to be on the wall a little bit, and you can get a little bit like, I don't like revenge. I don't like playing into revenge. I love Republic. They don't have any revenge apart from Ahsoka Jedi No More, and he didn't seem to have a plan for what he was going to do when he came up against a revenge list. And I could check on Longshanks. I got the impression he probably faced like a couple of Cassians already that day. Like, there were a lot of Cassians going about. I didn't face any mirrors, but I did fight 3 bosses, which we'll talk more about that when we get to the final standings at the end of the game. Yeah, maybe there's always is with tournaments a big element of luck in terms of who you get paired into and what that feels like. I didn't like from my run. I was Cassianing into other people who weren't Cassian, right? You know, yeah. And then my round 6. So I was into Ryan. Now, I played Ryan once before. My first ever tournament, I was playing Seps, Element Games, and there was one more round than there needed to be. And so even though I wasn't doing particularly well, I ended up playing the undefeated Ryan at the end of that. Now, that was back in the Iden meta, and he was running Iden, and he absolutely clobbered me. Like, And I was knackered, and it was the last round of a long day, and I knew I wasn't going to do anything, and I knew I had to play the guy who was undefeated, so I played a really bad game of Shatterpoint back then, right? So I should have known when it was Ryan that I was in for a rough time, but foolishly I was like, oh, right, yeah, I've just handed, like, Sam Page's boss list to Hammering. This is boss with Mace, but, like, I'm not sure what Mace is going to do here, but it sounds aggressive, right? Mace has a lightsaber, very aggressive guy. I'll just repeat my success of round 5 into round 6 and get another win. That's not how it went. So this was the much trailed worst defeat of the day. Ryan played Boss. Like, I've always known that Boss has two ways to play. You can pair him with Hunter, and he becomes this really aggressive machine of just dealing out loads of damage. Or you can pair him with Obi, and he becomes really defensive because you got the hunkers from Fixer and Obi's hunker shenanigans, and they're just all hunkered up all the time. And that's why people say, oh, the thing to do against Delta Squad is to kill Fixer because he gives them the extra dice and he spaffs out all the hunkers and all these things. Ryan was playing boss in a new third way, mobility boss. Now, I think this was kind of enabled by his draw order was favourable to him, right? He started off with a Shatterpoint. Shatterpointed boss was able to like do the thing where boss dashes everybody, and then boss takes a load of damage and is exceedingly mobile. And then he pulled that off again when he drew boss's card, and he had one turn where he scored 4, which is never good, and he literally won the Delta Squad was just everywhere all the time, always in motion, and then you know Mace Windu was just locking down one point over on one side with the 2 points at one point with the steadfast and the protection. Like Mace had the 501st with him, and I got them almost killed, and they were alive on 1. Like, and that would have made a big difference at that point as well because of the protection. But it was just a real bad drubbing. Ryan is a really good player, and I was asking him like, why? Because it wasn't as bad as last time when we got randomly matched up because literally there was no one else for anyone to, like, he'd played everybody else at the tournament and he was undefeated, and now he had to play me for that first time mess up. Whereas this one, it was just like he'd met going on his run, he'd encountered some of the people who were going to be in the. Well, I played against the guy that came third, but he'd encountered some of the people that came really high up the table. So he'd taken a couple of losses, but yeah, real bad drubbing, which, yeah, real bad. So here's the final standing. So winner, Peter McCabe, who tends to win these things in the UK, right? No surprise there. Probably the best English Shatterpoint player, right? Second place, Rafael from Poland. So I had a couple of guys that came over from Poland just to play in this GT, which is, I think, a massive testament to Jed, right? That it's not the LG, like it's not the LGT, it's not Griffcom that people are coming over for. It's Element Games, which sounds like from the name like it's just named after the game store, so it's like the least important one. But then for the people who know, that's the one to be. This is the I think probably the most coveted GT win, despite being not. It's not LGT. It's not UK Games Expo. It's just Element Games. But there you go. They did it right. Connor, who I played. Sorry, I should say. So Pete was running Cassian PLC. Raphael was running primarily. It was running Cassian Jin, and then you had Connor, who, into me played Obi Kiadimundi. That was his main list, I think. Then you had Louis, who was mainly on Obi Annie. Then you had Zombie Hedgehog, right, in 5th, who was mainly on Cassian PLC. Then you had Ollie, who I believe was also mainly on Cassian PLC. And then you had the other Polish fella, Simon, who I believe was mainly on Cassian and Kanan. And then you had Dinosaur Bob, who I believe was mainly on, I think it was Boss Obi was his main list. But like, so everybody in the top 8 had Cassian or Obi-Wan, which is interesting. And only Dinosaur Bob in 8th had Boss. Boss is interesting, isn't he? Because he gives me. I mean, I had 2 wins and 1 loss against Boss, but historically, Boss has given me a lot of trouble. I think Bosses might be one of these guys who maybe he's a bit gatekeepery. I don't know. And then I'm not going to read out the whole thing. I'm just going to scan down for a couple of points of interest. So Fraser, who beat me quite badly, came 10th. Then Ryan, who beat me extremely badly, 11th. And then where are we? Sam Page, who I beat handily, still managed to finish above me on tiebreakers, right, in 20th place. My lovely wife Helen in 22nd place, beaten me. I'm in 25th there. But we're 3 and 3. How am I out 3 and 3? And then my good friend Ben Hodgson, aka Oro, sadly only 1 win and 5 losses. But you know, what can you do? It happens sometimes to the best of us, right? And that was basically the run. So prizes, prize support. So I got a second set of participation cards. So that's the 5 Shatterpoint cards. People can get a bit funny about you using the Shatterpoint cards because like people say that they're a bit thicker and they can see the different colors. By the time I use some sleeves that have a textured back, so I genuinely can't tell the difference. But I always keep not one of those in my box as well in case my opponent's going to be like, oh, I'd rather you didn't use them. Like, fine. But like, I like them. I use them. It is what it is. We also got 3 more of each color of dice, so that the purple and the green dice. So I'll probably have more purple and green dice than I need now, given that we got 6 of each at GriffCon. I have now. I was talking about Oro, like what's the best way, and I'd love people to weigh in on this as well. What's the best way in terms of dice to organise your actual kit? So in my box currently now, I have, in terms of defense dice, I have 3 lime green ones from this season, 3 emerald green ones from last season, and 3 blue ones from the starter set. And for attack dice, I have 5 purple, 5 brown from last season, and 5 grey from the starter set. So 15 attack dice, 9 defense dice. I think that's all the dice that I need, right? But then it's nice to have the 5s color coded so you can pick up 5 dice easily without having to count them, which is cool. Originally I only had 4 brown dice, but then Helen gave me one of her brown dice because she just wants all purple. So because she doesn't really like the poop color, so that's fair. And then I picked up some foils, not because I won them, not because I deserved them, but because Jed was just like, yeah, I've got this massive box of all of like the older. So he had the GT Season 1 foils, and the last time I had the chance to get GT Season 1 foils, I was only playing Separatists, so I wanted to pick up the Rebel GT Season 1 foils, and he also had an initiation kit, so the 4 foils from the starter box. Now, Helen and I bought one of those to share previously off eBay. So I had foil Ventress and foil Maul. Since then, I've acquired an Ahsoka, and Helen has another Maul. So I got a foil Ahsoka card for me and a foil Maul card for her. So we're all stocked up on all the older foils. And then we got the 2 stickers, obviously, that you get for participating. And then Jed, because he's lovely, bought by the same token Force tokens for everybody as a participation award. So the by the same token tokens for Shatterpoint are really, really nice. Far better than anything I can make on my 3D printer, but they are fantastically expensive. You know, if you end up wanting to buy like a whole set of them. So really nice thing to have there, really unneeded, unnecessary, but like wow, staggered by that. So that was amazing. Thanks again, Jed, for the going the extra mile there with those Force tokens. Really, really nice of you. yeah, so came away with loads of stuff despite like just an average finish, which was cool. They also rattled off a massive Lego Star Destroyer. Like, I'm actually glad I didn't win it because I'm positive it wouldn't have fit in the car with all our other stuff for both kids as well. And then there was Lego Star Wars sets for like first, second, third, wooden spoon, best painted, best in faction, like best player who had 4 characters from the same faction as well. So that was really cool to see. So much stuff. So my personal reflection: I am going to the London Grand Tournament on Saturday, right? I am so torn. There's part of me that says no, just take the same stuff you took to Element Games. You did 3 and 3. It wasn't bad. You won't have to learn any new stuff. But like the thing with the game with list building in is you always come back for any event. You're like, okay, well, should I tweak my list a little bit? And there's part of me that's like, do I just want to take a 2x2 where there's one list that is all the best stuff, right? So I think I am most comfortable with a list that is Cassian and PLC and Baze and Churret and Rebel Commandos, right? And I think those 4 together being in my list makes me happier and makes the game seem a bit straightforward, right? Not saying that I won every game where I took PLC, okay, but then you think, well, what secondaries do you want to take? You can take 2 4-point secondaries, or you can take a 5-point and a 3-point, depending on how you cut it, right? Now, what if I swap it round from my Cassian Anchor? I'm not going to do Anchor, and it lets me take K2SO in every game. I have a really weird relationship with K2SO because every time I use him, I kind of like him and he does stuff. But I have this weird mental thing where I don't value him as highly as everybody around me. Like, Helen really dislikes having to play into K2SO, and people get very, oh, it's K2SO. It would give me a list with 3 revenge triggers in the same list, and that seems a bit mental. I also like. I don't know. I don't know how much if I fully grok in my bones, how much better or worse protection, not protection, not steadfast, what's the word of it? Lockdown is versus wins ties, right? So previously I would run Cassian, Ezra, Baze and Churret, and then with PLC, great. Often what you want to do is you're dashing Ezra around, but Lockdown is, I think, probably always better than Breaks Ties, right? And K2's just got this uncanny ability just to hold a point by himself against the Mongol horde, as it were. So maybe I want to run that. And then it's a 3-point and the toss up between Luke and Bodhi. I put Bodhi there. It could easily be Luke. I go backwards and forwards in my mind out which is better, Bodhi or Luke, Bodhi or Luke, Bodhi or Luke. Like, Luke's a bit cheaper on force, generally, because Bodhi will want to spend a force every activation to move something. Luke only sometimes needs to get his climb, and he's often quite happy just getting his repo out on somebody else. But Bodhi could dash anybody. Luke could only repo PLC and or K2, but then being able to reposition K2 is pretty ridiculous. And Luke possibly has decent synergy with the commandos because they're often hunkered, and then Luke give him 2 rerolls, but then Luke would have to get over there. But then Bodhi does have a steadfast bubble, and you can give PLC and K2 and Andor immunity to expose as well, which isn't bad. I don't know. One of the 2 in there. I have time to play 1 in-person game between now and the LGT, right? So it's really tough. I don't need bags of practice with any of these units because I've used them all before. I know what they do. I wouldn't be sitting there reading cards. Yeah. So I'm just thinking, and then the and then just play that list into every game. And if you come up against the person who's like, well, actually, I'm just not going to wound you, it's like, well, okay, I've still got Bodhi and Leia that can throw out movement. I've still got K2SO that can hold, that can lock down points, even when he isn't like um, getting to revenge onto them. And I've still got Rebel Commandos and Baze and Churret who can do phenomenal damage when they're Shatterpointed. It can do stuff if someone I think it's a list that can do stuff if someone decides that what they're going to do is not kill you and try and dance about. Right, it has quite a lot of killing power in the sports, in PLC potentially actually, and you could Shatterpoint PLC and not hate it, right? Because she has sharpshooter 2, so you can give a sharpshooter 4. Yeah, and then the second list is just, I think, like, well, I've been floating this on the Discord. The first list that I put up was actually the Spectre squad there, but with like with Sabine in, and then the other squad was like Jedi Luke with Ezra and Bartu. Super Stardust on the Discord was like, obviously he's a big Jin Erso fan with a name like Super Stardust, and he was like, why don't you try Jin and Callus and Pathfinders with the Ghost Crew there as a second squad. I think that list has play. Obviously, if I was going to play that list as my main list, I think that the Commandos are just an upgrade to the Pathfinders, but it being what it is, it being a slightly worse list, I think I think you could play that list once and have a decent chance of winning that game, and then just hammer that first list as that's your all comers. It probably has hard counters. I don't know, and I don't know whether it should be Bodhi or Luke in that list either at all, and I don't have time to play as many games as I would like. I can play one in-person game, and then me and Oro are going to try and play TTS on Thursday night, maybe. Right? Don't know. Were you at the event? Have I totally blanked on aspects of our game that you thought were cool or interesting, which is very likely? Do you have any advice for me in terms of my list? I should maybe you feel strongly that I should stick with what I played at Element because it was a good list, and you think the flexibility is good. Maybe you feel strongly that I should move to 2x2 because that's what all the best like top players do. I don't know. Like I said, I'm going to the LGT on Saturday and Sunday. I think tickets are still available if you want to play Shatterpoint at the LGT. I don't know how many they've sold, but there's not that many. Like, I'm not signed up on Longshanks yet either because I'm still dithering them on my list. There's not that many signed up on Longshanks. I think it's going to be an easier ask to try and like top 8, top 4 because there's going to be a lot less people. Whether I actually can is a different matter. I did top 8 at GriffCon, and that was with kind of looking back on it was quite a garbo list. So we'll see. Do like, subscribe, comment, etc., and consider joining the Discord. And a big thank you to all my channel members. Thank you all very much for watching, and particularly Alex, who supports me financially, and is one of the members who has gotten a free set of GT Shatterpoint participation cards as well. So special offers and deals for people who are in that members room. All right, guys. I'll see you again next time. Cheery, 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 cheery. Bye, 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 bye.